I'm Chloe, 32, female, and my parents disowned me because I refused to keep paying their mortgage. It sounds harsh when I say it so plainly, like a headline stripped of all nuance. But the truth is, the nuance only makes it worse. The story isn't just about a single financial disagreement. It's about a lifetime of carefully constructed expectations, of being the load-bearing pillar in a structure I was told was a home, only to find out it was just a stage for a play I never auditioned for. My parents, Carol and David, are pillars of their community. At least that's the image they've spent 3 decades perfecting. My father, David, is a high school history teacher, a man whose quiet demeanor is often mistaken for gentle wisdom. My mother, Carol, is the true architect of their social standing. Before retiring, she worked in community relations for a local bank, a job that was less about banking and more about networking. She collected friendships and social obligations like charms on a bracelet, each one glinting under the public eye. Together, they presented a perfect portrait of suburban success, stable, respectable, and deeply involved in every charity bake sale and neighborhood watch meeting. I was their other great success story, their only child. Chloe, the IT project manager with a great job, a steady income, and a boundless sense of familial duty. For years, I played my part perfectly. My partner, Mark, a kind and observant graphic designer, was the first person to gently point out that the script I was following seemed to be written entirely by my parents. The mortgage payments didn't start with a demand. They never did. They started 4 years ago with a crisis. I remember the phone call vividly. My mother's voice was strained, a carefully performed symphony of panic and restraint. Chloe, honey, I don't know who else to turn to, she'd begun, the classic opening line. Your father and we've had some unexpected expenses. The property taxes went up far more than we budgeted for, and the roof needs urgent repairs. We're in a bit of a bind. Of course, I offered to help. I had just received a significant promotion, and for the first time in my life, I had a comfortable financial cushion. Don't worry, Mom, I said, my chest puffing with pride at being able to be the rescuer. I can help. How much do you need? The amount was precisely half of their monthly mortgage payment. They explained it as a short-term loan just for a few months until they could reshuffle their finances. I sent the money without a second thought. The first month turned into the second into the sixth, and soon, helping out just became a line item in my monthly budget. The loan was never mentioned again. It had seamlessly transformed into an expectation. Anytime I would gently inquire if they were getting back on their feet, my mother would sigh dramatically. Oh, you have no idea, Chloe. Something always comes up. The car, the furnace. It's a never-ending cycle when you own a home. You're such a lifesaver. We couldn't manage without you. Mark watched this unfold with a growing unease. Are you sure they actually need it? He asked one evening as I was scheduling the transfer. They just got back from that weekend spa retreat with the Hendersons. I bristled, feeling a defensive loyalty. It was a gift certificate, Mark, from my dad's school for his 30-year service anniversary. He didn't push, but he had planted a seed of doubt. I started paying closer attention. The unexpected expenses my parents mentioned always seemed to coincide with lifestyle upgrades. One year they needed help with a major plumbing issue, and a month later they had a brand new top-of-the-line stainless steel gas grill on their patio, the centerpiece of a neighborhood barbecue where my father proudly talked about the importance of investing in your home. My contribution was never acknowledged, of course. To their friends, I was just their wonderful, successful daughter. The details of that success and where it was being funneled remained a private family matter. The most telling incident happened 2 years ago. My mother called, this time in a state of manufactured hysteria. Their car, a perfectly reliable sedan, had completely given up the ghost, and they needed a new one immediately for my father to get to work. She lamented their bad luck and their tight budget. Feeling the familiar pull of duty, I transferred a significant sum to them, enough for a down payment on a decent, practical vehicle. 2 weeks later, I drove over for our Sunday dinner. Parked in the driveway was not a practical sedan, but a sleek, new luxury SUV. It was the kind of car my mother had been pointing out in magazines for months. Wow, I said, trying to keep my voice even as my mother came out to greet me. This is nice. Isn't it a dream? She beamed, running a hand over the hood. David deserves something comfortable for his commute, and it has such wonderful safety ratings. You can't put a price on peace of mind, can you? I just stared at the car, the number I had transferred from my savings account flashing in my mind. I thought you were in a bind, I said softly. My mother's smile tightened just a fraction. Well, your contribution helped us get a much better financing deal, honey. It was a very smart investment. We couldn't have done it without you. She patted my arm, a gesture of both gratitude and dismissal, and led me inside, already changing the subject to a neighbor's recent gossip. I felt a knot of resentment in my stomach, but I swallowed it. I told myself I was helping them, that it made them happy, and that as their daughter, that was my job. I was paying for their happiness, one smart investment at a time. The mortgage payment, the car payment, the constant, unspoken financial drip, it was the price of admission to this family. I just hadn't realized yet what the cost of stopping would be. The dream of our own home started quietly as a conversation over a shared pizza on a rainy Tuesday. Mark and I had been renting the same one-bedroom apartment for 5 years. It was our cozy little haven, but the walls were beginning to feel closer every day. We were in our early 30s, with stable careers and a shared vision for the future that included a small yard for a dog and a spare room that could one day be a nursery or a home office. I saw a listing today, Mark said, pushing a stray piece of pepperoni back onto his slice. Just browse, a little bungalow over in the Northwood area. It has a garden. My heart did a little flip. Oh yeah, is it nice? He slid his phone across the table. The picture showed a charming, modest house with a wide front porch and big, bright windows. It wasn't a mansion, but it looked like a home. It looked real. For the next hour, we stopped eating and started dreaming, scrolling through listings, pointing out features we liked, and talking about what color we'd paint the kitchen. The conversation was light and exciting, but underneath it, a new and serious intention began to form. That night after Mark had gone to sleep, I stayed up, my laptop open not to work, but to my banking app and a mortgage calculator. I typed in our combined savings, our incomes, and our expenses. I ran the numbers again and again, but the result was always the same. We were close, so painfully close. We had been diligent savers, but the down payment required for even a modest home in our area was substantial. Then I isolated the problem. It was a single, recurring monthly payment that stood out like a red flag on my financial statement. Transfer to C&D Enterprises, my code for Carol and David. The amount I sent them every month was almost exactly what we would need to be saving to meet our goal in a year. Without it, we were treading water. With it, we could start swimming toward the shore. A wave of anxiety washed over me. For 4 years, that payment had been as automatic as my rent. It was a fixed part of my financial landscape. The thought of stopping it felt like trying to stop a train. It wasn't just about the money, it was about upsetting the delicate, unspoken contract I had with my parents. I was the provider, the reliable one, the one who made their lives comfortable. What would happen if I suddenly couldn't or wouldn't play that role anymore? I brought it up with Mark the next morning. I was hesitant, worried he would see me as weak for being so scared of a simple conversation. So I did the math last night, I began, stirring my coffee so vigorously it threatened to slop over the rim of my mug. About the house. He looked up from his laptop, his expression open and patient, and we can do it, I said, taking a deep breath. We can actually do it, but I'd have to stop the payments to my parents. I waited for his reaction, bracing myself for a complicated discussion. Instead, he just nodded, a look of relief spreading across his face. Okay, he said simply. Okay, that's it, I asked, surprised. Chloe, I've been waiting for you to say that for years, he said gently. It's your money, we're trying to build a future. You can't be expected to finance their life and ours at the same time, it's not fair. But they think they need it, I argued, even though I knew I was just voicing my own fears. My mom will be so upset, she'll say I'm abandoning them. Mark reached across the table and took my hand. His was warm and steady. Then she'll be wrong, you're not abandoning them, you're starting your own life. That's what children are supposed to do. A good parent would be thrilled for you. His words were a lifeline. He was right. A good parent would be thrilled. The question, which I was too afraid to ask out loud, was what kind of parents I actually had. Was their love and pride conditional on my financial support? I had to believe it wasn't. I had to believe they would understand. For the next week, I rehearsed the conversation in my head. I planned my words carefully, focusing on the positive. This wasn't about cutting them off, it was about building my own future. It was happy news. I would frame it as happy news. I decided to call them on Sunday, our usual check-in day. As the day approached, my stomach was in knots. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. On Sunday afternoon, I sat on the edge of our bed, my phone in my hand, my thumb hovering over their contact photo. A smiling, perfectly posed picture of them from their last cruise. Another luxury I now suspected I had indirectly sponsored. Mark sat beside me, offering a quiet, supportive presence. "You can do this," he whispered, rubbing my back. "Just tell them your good news." I took a deep, shuddering breath, filled with a mixture of hope and dread. I hoped for the parents who would cheer for my success. I dreaded the parents who would only mourn the loss of their subsidy. I pressed the call button, my heart pounding in my ears, praying that the family I had believed in all my life would be the one to answer the phone. "Hi, Mom," I said, forcing a cheerful tone into my voice when she answered. "How are you guys doing?" "Chloe, we were just talking about you," my mother chirped. Her voice was light and breezy, the voice she used when everything was right in her world. "Your father is out back admiring his new rose bushes. We were thinking of having a little garden party next month. You and Mark must come." "That sounds great," I said, my stomach tightening. A garden party meant expenses, which always seemed to circle back to me. "Actually, I have some really exciting news to share. Is Dad around?" A moment later, I could hear my father pick up the extension. "Hi, sweetie, what's the good news?" This was it. I took a deep breath and plunged in, framing it just as Mark and I had rehearsed. "Well, Mark and I have decided it's time to take the next step. We're going to start saving seriously to buy our own house." There was a beat of silence on the other end. It was not the reaction I had hoped for. "Oh," my mother said. Her voice had lost its earlier warmth. It was flat, cautious. "A house? That's a very big expense, Chloe." "It is," I agreed, trying to keep the momentum going. "But we've been running the numbers and we're in a good position. Which brings me to something else I needed to talk to you about. Now that we're going to be putting every spare penny toward a down payment, I won't be able to help out with your mortgage anymore. This coming month will be the last payment I can make." The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. I could picture them in their pristine living room, my mother's face hardening, my father looking on helplessly. It was my mother who spoke first. Her voice was dangerously quiet. "What did you just say?" "I said that I need to start saving for my own future," I repeated, my voice trembling slightly. "Mom, this is a good thing. It's what you've always wanted for me, to be settled and have a home of my own." "What we've always wanted for you?" she scoffed, and the politeness shattered. A raw, ugly bitterness replaced it. "What we wanted was a daughter who understood the meaning of family, of gratitude. For 4 years, you've been helping us keep our heads above water, and now, just like that, you're going to pull the rug out from under us." "That's not what I'm doing," I protested, my voice rising. "It was supposed to be temporary, remember? And you're not drowning, you just went on a weekend trip." "That was a gift," she snapped. "You always throw that in our faces. You have no idea what it costs to run this house, to maintain a certain standard. We have obligations, a position in the community to uphold." "So your position in the community is more important than my future?" The question flew out of my mouth before I could stop it. My father finally spoke, his voice laced with disappointment. "Chloe, that's not fair. Your mother is just worried. We depend on you." "But I can't be depended on like this forever," I cried, tears welling in my eyes. "I'm 32 years old. I want a house. I want a family. Don't you want that for me?" "Of course we do," my mother said, her voice dripping with condescending pity. "But you're being incredibly selfish. You have a wonderful job. You make more than enough money. You're acting as if we're asking for the world when all we've asked for is a little help from our daughter who is supposed to love us." Every word was a perfectly crafted dart aimed at my deepest insecurities. The guilt she was piling on was immense, a physical weight in my chest. I felt like a terrible, ungrateful child. I do love you, I whispered, my voice breaking. But this isn't fair. You're living a lifestyle you can't afford and using my money to do it. How dare you, she hissed. After everything we've given you, every opportunity, this is the thanks we get, you accuse us of being liars. I'm not accusing you of anything, I said, trying to regain control. I'm just telling you what I need to do for my own life. Well, you've made your priorities clear, my mother said coldly. If your money is more important to you than your family, then so be it. Don't expect to hear from us. And with that, she hung up. The click of the phone echoed in the sudden silence of my apartment. I sat there stunned, the phone still pressed to my ear. My father hadn't said another word, he hadn't defended me, he hadn't tried to mediate, he had just let her do it. Mark, who had been listening silently, wrapped his arms around me. I collapsed against him, sobbing. It wasn't just a fight. It felt like a fundamental breaking of something I thought was unbreakable. I had gone into the conversation with happy news, with hope for an exciting future, and I had come out of it feeling like a villain, a selfish monster who had just destroyed her own family. The worst part was a small, insidious voice in my head, a voice that sounded suspiciously like my mother's, wondering if maybe they were right. The week following the phone call was one of the longest of my life. The silence from my parents was a tangible presence, a heavy blanket of disapproval that smothered my thoughts. I checked my phone constantly, hoping for a text, an olive branch, anything. I imagined my father would call, that he would tell me my mother had overreacted, and that of course they understood. I told myself they just needed time to cool off and process the news. Mark was my rock. He listened to my endless cycles of guilt and anger and gently but firmly reminded me that I had done nothing wrong. "They're adults, Chloe," he said one night as I stared blankly at my laptop, unable to work. "They're responsible for their own finances. You are not their retirement plan." I knew he was right in my head, but my heart was a tangled mess of years of conditioning. The need for their approval was a deep, instinctual part of me, and its absence left me feeling untethered. Exactly 1 week after the disastrous phone call, an email landed in my inbox. The subject line was stark, a final communication. It was from my mother's email address. My heart leaped, thinking it was a prelude to a conversation, a reconciliation. I was wrong. I opened it, and the words on the screen were so cold, so formal, they seemed to be written by a stranger. It was a carefully drafted letter, clearly meant to be a legal and emotional severing of ties. To Chloe, it began without any term of endearment. "Your father and I have had a week to reflect on your recent decision. It has become painfully clear to us that your priorities have shifted, and you no longer hold this family in the regard we once believed you did. Your ultimatum, presented so callously, has shown us that your financial ambitions now outweigh any sense of loyalty or gratitude you may have once possessed. We have always prided ourselves on raising a daughter who was kind and selfless. It is with the deepest sorrow that we now realize we were mistaken. The daughter we knew would never abandon her parents in their time of need, nor would she hurl such baseless and hurtful accusations at them. Therefore, we are left with no choice. Since you have made the decision to financially separate yourself from this family, we have decided to make that separation complete. We consider our relationship with you to be concluded. We will not be contacting you, and we ask that you respect our privacy during this difficult time by doing the same. We release you from any and all familial obligations as you so clearly wished. We wish you well in the future you have chosen. Sincerely, Carol and David. I read it 3 times, each word a fresh stab of pain. Sincerely, they had signed it sincerely. It was the kind of closing you'd use with a business associate, not your own child. Release you from familial obligations as if they were granting me a favor. The cruelty was breathtaking. They weren't just angry, they were erasing me. They were formally and officially disowning me. When Mark came home and found me sitting in the dark, staring at the screen, he read the email over my shoulder. His hand rested on my back, a silent, solid weight of support. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just said, "I'm so sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry they are doing this to you." The sadness was immense, a physical ache in my chest. But underneath it, for the first time, a flicker of anger began to burn. They hadn't just disagreed with me. They had rewritten history, painting me as a cold, calculating villain in their narrative of parental martyrdom. The second wave of the betrayal came about a month later. My Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, called me. Her tone was hesitant. "Chloe, honey, I heard about what's going on with you and your mom," she started. "I just wanted to check ins." "What have you heard?" I asked, my voice flat. She sighed. "Well, Carol is telling everyone that you just stopped helping them out of the blue. She said you got a big promotion and decided you were too good for your old family, that you told them they were a burden on your new, fancy life. She's heartbroken, Chloe. She told the whole book club she doesn't know what she did to deserve such a cruel daughter." I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't just disowning me in private, they were launching a public smear campaign. They were methodically destroying my reputation with every person I had ever known, every relative, every family friend. They were salting the earth, ensuring that even if I wanted to, I could never come back. The story was so twisted, so laughably false, yet I knew people would believe it. My parents had spent years cultivating an image of selfless community leaders. Who would ever believe that they were capable of such calculated manipulation? They had taken my dream of buying a home and twisted it into an arrogant betrayal. They weren't just cutting me out of their lives, they were trying to cut me out of my own history, replacing the real me with a caricature of a monster. The sadness was still there, but it was now being overtaken by a cold, hard rage. They had fired the first shot, but this was a war for the truth, and I was beginning to realize I couldn't afford to lose. For the next few months, I tried to build a fortress around myself. I blocked my parents' numbers, though they never tried to call. I politely rebuffed the few relatives who reached out, not wanting to get into a he said, she said battle that I knew I would lose. My parents had the home field advantage, they had the years of public goodwill I could never compete with. Instead, I poured all my energy into the future they had tried to deny me. Mark and I threw ourselves into house hunting. We spent our weekends going to open houses and our evenings poring over listings. It was a welcome distraction, a tangible goal that kept the bitterness at bay. Every new kitchen we saw, every backyard we imagined our future dog playing in was a small act of defiance. It was proof that my life was moving forward with or without their approval. Slowly, it began to work. The acute pain of the betrayal started to fade into a dull, chronic ache. I was building a new life with Mark, a life based on mutual respect and support, and it was a good life. We found a house we adored, a bit smaller than we'd initially dreamed of, but it had a beautiful garden and that all-important spare room. We put in an offer, and to our amazement, it was accepted. For the first time in a long time, I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. We were going to have a home, our homes. It was in the midst of this newfound happiness that the final blow fell. I was scrolling through a local community news feed on social media one evening, looking for recommendations for movers, when a headline caught my eye. Local couple Carol and David to receive Family of the Year award. My blood ran cold. I clicked on the link. There was a professionally taken photo of my parents, smiling warmly, standing in front of their perfect house. The article was a glowing tribute written by the head of the Community Spirit Foundation, a prominent local charity my mother had volunteered with for years. The article gushed about their decades of service, their unwavering support for local causes, and their strong family values. And then I saw the sentence that made me feel physically ill. In an age where family ties can often become strained, the article read, Carol and David serve as an inspiration. They have fostered a spirit of generosity not only in their community but also in their home, raising a wonderfully successful and supportive daughter, Chloe, who, despite her own demanding career, has always put her family first. We are so proud of her, Carol was quoted as saying. She is our greatest achievement. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. They were using me. They were using the very daughter they had disowned and slandered as a prop to win an award. They were taking my financial support, the very thing that had caused this entire rift, and parading it as proof of their superior parenting. The hypocrisy was so staggering, so profoundly audacious, it almost defied belief. Mark, I whispered, my voice hoarse, you need to see this. He came over and read the article over my shoulder. He let out a low whistle. Wow, that takes some serious nerve. Nerve, I said, a hysterical laugh bubbling up. This is beyond nerve. This is a complete fabrication. They're accepting an award for being a great family while they have an email disowning me saved in their sent folder. They're telling the world how supportive I am while they're telling our relatives I'm a monster. The article went on to state that the award would be presented at the Foundation's annual fundraising gala in 2 weeks. It was the town's biggest social event of the year, attended by everyone who was anyone in their social circle. My parents would be the guests of honor. They would stand on a stage, accept a plaque, and give a speech about the importance of family. A switch flipped inside me. The anger that had been simmering for months boiled over into a cold, clear resolve. This wasn't about me anymore, it was about the truth. They had built their entire reputation on a foundation of lies, and they were using my name, my work, and my pain as the cornerstone. They thought I would stay silent, that I would be too hurt or too ashamed to fight back. They had underestimated me. I have to do something, I said, my voice steady and firm. I can't let them do this. Mark looked at me, his expression serious. What are you thinking? I'm going to that gala, I said, a plan forming in my mind. They want to talk about their supportive daughter. Fine, let's let their supportive daughter have a chance to speak. Chloe, are you sure? He asked, concern in his eyes. That's going to be intense. I know, I replied, feeling a strange sense of calm descend over me. The fear and guilt that had plagued me for months were gone, burned away by the sheer audacity of their lies. But if I don't, they win. They get to erase me and replace me with a version that suits their story. I've spent my whole life letting them write my narrative. It's time I picked up the pen myself. I looked from the smiling picture of my parents to the accepted offer on our new house lying on the coffee table. One represented a past built on lies, the other a future I was building on truth. I knew which one I had to fight for. I bought a ticket to the gala that night. The night of the gala, I felt a strange and unnerving calm. I chose my outfit with care, a simple, elegant dark blue dress. I didn't want to look vengeful or overly dramatic. I wanted to look like what I was, a professional woman, a daughter, a person who deserved to be heard. Mark stood by me, his hand a steady presence on my back as he straightened my collar. He wasn't coming inside with me, this was something I had to do alone. But he drove me to the venue, a grand community hall bustling with the town's elite. Remember, he said, squeezing my hand before I got out of the car. You're just telling the truth, you have nothing to be ashamed of. I nodded, took a deep breath, and walked into the lion's dens. The hall was filled with the low hum of polite conversation and the clinking of glasses. Tables were draped in white linen, adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces. I saw my parents near the front of the room, holding court. My mother was radiant in a sequin gown, laughing as a man I recognized as the mayor shook my father's hand. They looked happy, triumphant. They looked like the family of the year. The sight of them, so completely at ease in their web of lies, solidified my resolve. I took a seat at a table in the back, nursing a glass of water, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. I watched the proceedings with a detached sense of observation. Speeches were made, pledges were given. Finally, the head of the foundation, a woman named Mrs. Gable, took the stage. And now, she began, her voice resonating through the microphone, for the moment we've all been waiting for. The presentation of our annual Family of the Year award. This year, we honor a couple who truly embodies the spirit of community and the unbreakable bonds of family, Carol and David. The room erupted in applause. My parents walked to the stage, beaming and waving. They accepted the large, engraved plaque, and my mother leaned into the microphone to give their acceptance speech. Oh my goodness, she began, dabbing a perfectly dry eye with a handkerchief. We are just so humbled, so incredibly honored. We don't do what we do for awards, of course. We do it because we believe in this community. We believe in family. She went on for several minutes, thanking everyone she had ever met. Then she arrived at the part I knew was coming. But really, she said, her voice thick with emotion as she placed a hand on my father's arm. We can't accept this award without acknowledging our greatest pride and joy, our daughter, Chloe. She couldn't be here tonight, her work is so demanding, but she is the reason we know what unconditional love is. In these trying times, when families face so many challenges, having a child who supports you no matter what, well, it's the greatest blessing a parent can ask for. The room was silent, captivated by her performance. A fresh wave of applause broke out. My stomach turned, this was it. Mrs. Gable stepped back up to the microphone. Thank you, Carol and David, for those beautiful words. We'd now like to open the floor for a few moments if anyone has any comments or congratulations for our honorees. This was my chance. Before anyone else could move, I stood up. My legs felt a little shaky, but my voice when I spoke was clear and strong. I have a comment. Every head in the room turned to look at me, a stranger in the back. I saw my parents squint, trying to make me out in the dim light. Then I saw the flicker of recognition on my mother's face, followed by a wave of pure, unadulterated horror. Her perfect smile vanished. I began walking slowly toward the stage, my heels clicking on the polished floor. A microphone was brought to me by a confused-looking event volunteer. My name is Chloe, I said into the microphone, my voice echoing through the silent hall. I'm Carol and David's daughter. A collective gasp went through the audience. People started whispering, looking from me to my parents, whose faces had gone pale. I just wanted to thank my parents for their very kind words, I continued, my gaze locked on them. I was so moved to hear my mother speak about the importance of a child's support, and she's right. For 4 years, I was proud to support them. I paid half of their mortgage every single month so they could maintain this life, this reputation. The whispering grew louder. My mother took a step forward, her hand outstretched as if to stop me. Chloe, this is not the time or the place. Actually, Mom, I think this is the perfect time and place, I said, my voice remaining calm and even. Because you see, about 3 months ago, I told my parents that I needed to stop those payments, not out of malice, but because my partner and I are finally buying our own home. We needed to save for our own future. I paused, letting the words sink in. I thought they would be happy for me. Instead, for making the responsible decision to start my own life, I was called selfish and ungrateful. And then, a week later, I received an email from them. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a printout of the disownment email. This email formally concluded our relationship. It released me from all familial obligations. In short, my parents, the family of the year, disowned their only child for wanting to buy a house. The silence in the room was now absolute, broken only by the shocked expression on Mrs. Gable's face. So while I appreciate the sentiment behind this award, I concluded, my eyes still fixed on my parents who now looked small and exposed under the stage lights, I cannot stand by and allow my family to accept it under false pretenses. The bond they're celebrating tonight is a fiction, a story they created for public consumption. The truth is that bond was broken the moment it stopped being profitable. Congratulations on the award. With that, I placed the microphone back on its stand, turned, and walked out of the hall. I didn't run. I walked with my head held high, the sound of 100 frantic whispers following me out the door. The facade had not just cracked, it had been brought down in a spectacular public collapse. And as the cool night air hit my face, I didn't feel vengeful or triumphant. I just felt free. The moment I stepped out of the hall, I took my first deep breath of the night. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for months was gone. I walked calmly to the car where Mark was waiting, his face etched with worry. When I got in, he just looked at me. Are you okay? He asked. I am, I said, a real genuine smile spreading across my face. I think I'm better than okay. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. A torrent of texts and missed calls. It was an explosion of reactions from the people who had just witnessed the implosion of my family. I saw my Aunt Linda's name flash on the screen, followed by numbers I didn't recognize. I silenced my phone and put it in the glove compartment. Not tonight, I said to Mark. Let's just go home. And for the first time, the word home didn't make me think of my parents' house. It made me think of the small bungalow we were days away from closing on, of the life Mark and I were building together. The fallout, as I learned over the next few weeks, was swift and brutal. My Aunt Linda called me a few days later, her voice a mixture of shock and apology. Chloe, I had no idea, she said. Your mother, the things you said, some people have started talking. Mrs. Gable is demanding an explanation. The Hendersons are avoiding their calls. It's all anyone in town is talking about. Apparently, after I left, my parents had stood frozen on the stage for a moment before my father mumbled something about a terrible misunderstanding and led my mother away. They fled the gala, leaving their award behind on the stage. The Community Spirit Foundation issued a quiet retraction a week later, stating that the award had been reconsidered. My parents' carefully constructed world crumbled. The friends who had admired their perfect life now looked at them with suspicion and pity. The social invitations dried up. Their reputation, the thing my mother had valued above all else, more than her own daughter's happiness, was in tatters. They had built their house on a foundation of sand, and I had simply been the tide that came in. They never tried to contact me. There was no angry phone call, no letter of apology, nothing. Their silence was the final confirmation that their relationship with me had always been transactional. When I was no longer an asset, I was a liability to be discarded. When I became a threat to their image, I was an enemy. There had been no love there, only a deep and unsettling narcissism. 6 weeks after the gala, Mark and I got the keys to our new house. The feeling of turning that key in the lock for the first time was indescribable. It was ours. Every wall, every floorboard was a testament to our hard work and our future. We spent the first night on an inflatable mattress in the middle of the empty living room, eating pizza off a cardboard box, just as we had when the dream first started. It's been a year now. We painted the kitchen a cheerful yellow. We adopted a scruffy terrier mix named Buster who loves the small backyard. The spare room is now my home office, a quiet space where I can work and look out at the garden we planted. My life is no longer defined by my parents' expectations or their approval. It's defined by the love I share with Mark, the joy our dog brings us, and the quiet satisfaction of a home built on truth and mutual respect. I don't know what my parents' lives are like now, and I've realized I don't need to. Letting them go was the hardest and best thing I have ever done. It allowed me to find out who I was without their reflection staring back at me. I am not just their daughter, I am Chloe, a homeowner, a partner, a woman who learned to stand up for herself. So for anyone out there who finds themselves in a similar situation, caught in a web of familial obligation that feels more like a trap, I have to ask, at what point does your own future become the priority? Is it selfish to build your own life, or is it the whole point?